Andrew, you'll be a great advisor to all the young people here, but just to ask you that the different mediums, the different kinds of films you've actually made, what to you is the common aspect of the power that a film has?
I think film has a special magic power to get into people's heads that sometimes can be harder than writing. I guess it's, we all want to communicate information to people, but to embed information in a story, to make it emotional, to have people connect to it, seems to be a special power that film maybe doesn't have a unique claim to, but it has a strong claim to it. And I just really enjoy working in that medium. It's not always explicit why visuals and why film work so well. There's still a little mystery and magic to it. So I enjoy that, and there seems to be a special power that I see. And even if you can tickle somebody and get them emotionally hooked into an idea, you can encourage them to seek the information down the road.
What's the difference between a film that works, a film that connects with the audience, that makes the point you're trying to make, and a film that doesn't?
I think if I knew a definitive answer to that.
It'll be interesting to see how the young leaders try to crack that.
Well, it is a very challenging medium. There's been some very successful filmmakers who still end up making flops after a string of successes. So there's no, I just don't think you can boil it down into a formula. But for me, clearly, achieving some kind of emotional connection with your audience, an emotional connection between characters in your film, that something's at stake, whether it's for the characters up on screen or, I think, so if there's some kind of conflict or something that's at stake, and in a narrative film or feature, that's between the characters on the screen, but in the kind of social filmmaking that I think we're talking about here, hopefully you're getting an emotional connection and creating something that's at stake with the actual viewer, that letting them not just know that their world can be a better place if they take some action or get involved, but that they will feel better, and it directly affects them.
What do you think a filmmaker needs to look at when he's telling his or her story? What is the passion, the honesty? What do you think the filmmaker actually needs before choosing a subject and being able to connect with the viewer?
I think you kind of hit it, which is connecting with your own inner passion, why it interests you. And even if you have a topic that you might have thought is not connecting with you, if you look deep enough, you will find something to hold on to. And I think you need something to hold on to because, at least for me, I find I'm working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week for an unknown length of time. And I get through those days by connecting with my passion and not just making widgets to deliver to some idea of what I think an audience wants. I want to communicate, so I want them to get it. But I'm guiding it by what I think is valuable for me, what I think really works, what I think touches me.
You've traveled around the world for your projects. What have you found different in the way different countries, different filmmakers from different countries tell their stories? And what have you found actually binds them together in a sense?
Well, I think, again, part of the magic of film is that there's actually a great deal of commonality in terms of how films communicate across cultures. So more than finding differences, I find similarities and camaraderie with the people that I work with. I think I'm just astounded by the commonality, actually.
Yeah. See things the same way in so many different ways, actually, in so many different countries. We thought that we could actually make this interactive as well, because I know a lot of you will actually be going out and making films, so we thought that we could actually open this up to the audience and have anybody who wants to ask Andrew questions go ahead and actually ask them. So, any questions?
So I had a question regarding the concept of invoking emotions in the audience. And I agree with you that that's a very important aspect of making a movie or a film. But at the same point of time, invoking emotions is can somehow be used for purposes that cannot be, you know, cannot be said to be completely ethical. And we have organizations all over the world who invoke these emotions through film. So how do you get that balance between invoking emotions and still being ethical enough to get your message across?
But let me ask you, when you say, what makes it unethical?
I'm not saying it makes it unethical. My point is that there can be, you know, how do you judge that something that is invoking, you know, your emotion, how do you judge that for yourself to prove it to be ethical or so-called unethical?
Well, I'd say if you pull on emotion too hard, it can seem heavy-handed, insulting, off-putting, crass. And I think the way there's a lot of challenges that require a very delicate balance and practice and working with the medium and being sensitive and being true to yourself, I think, is the answer. There's no objective way.
Yeah, that answers my question.
But let me ask, does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does. So I think the message that came across to me is to sort of maintain a balance and not bring on too much emotion to overwhelm the audience so that they start sort of doubting your message if it's ethical to move into that unethical territory.
Well, I think that's good. I think you need to care and you want to communicate your caring. And if that care and your commitment is coming across honestly, even if people think you're caring too much and they have some distance, they're going to take it as honest because it comes from you and they will not be put off by the project. But if you're trying to evoke emotion that is above and beyond, that comes off as false, you're going to push people away.
Thank you.
As a professional, Andrew, does it ever run the danger of becoming just another job or just another film? How do you and how do young people get passionate about their cause, but tomorrow when they're making a film, they say, okay, this doesn't really excite me, but I have to do it, it's my job. How do you handle that?
Again, I think it's connecting inside with your own goals and passion, but of course, if you've been working day after day, long days, there's some days where you show up and you do it. The less sleep you've got, the more you have to just show up and do it. I think it's checking in with yourself. I mean, especially when I feel that happening, at the end of the day, I have to check in with myself and reconnect with why I'm on the project. And rather than just racing to get my 5 hours of sleep, taking the 20 minutes to remind myself, why am I involved in the project? What am I trying to do? Why am I valuable here? Am I making a difference?
Mm-hmm.
Hello, sir. You know, you've worked on documentaries and stuff, and that is kind of similar to the kind of work we'll be doing over the next few days. And documentaries are absolutely different from other various kinds of films, like, you know, documentaries, which have a message that you necessarily want to get across. So what areas of cinematography do you stress on to make a documentary kind of successful? And, like, you know?
Well, I think starting with your message, what you want to communicate, and then going down to your viewer, how they're receiving that information. The cinematography, the lighting, the sound, you want to know something about because you're actually having to make those films. But they're tools, and you want to focus on the end game, your message, and where you're going with it. I mean, some of the details of the skills that you'll need to know, hopefully will be imparted to you in the next couple days through your own experiments, through your own work, through your own failures and your own successes.
Thank you.
Do you think while making a film you're influenced by what you're exposed to? Like you've decided a subject matter, but then when you reach there you get exposed to other things and you get influenced, and so maybe your style changes or the subject changes. And if yes, do you try to control stimuli while you're making a film?
I couldn't hear you that well. Are you saying when you start a film, what are my influences, and does the nature of the film change in the process?
Yeah, while you're making the film, do things that you're exposed to affect the subject or affect the way you want to portray it?
Absolutely. Everything, the book I'm reading at the time, that I'm working on a project is going to affect me. The people I'm interacting with is going to affect me. What I notice in the newspaper that morning might affect me. And in terms of the film, it's a dynamic process that always stays alive, which is part of what makes it so enjoyable. You might go in thinking you're making one kind of project with a certain message, and here's your channel, and you learn something in the making of the film that brings it over here. And then your editor gets involved, and he starts cutting it together, and he sees something different, and he brings it over here. So I think that's one of the beautiful things, that it's a dynamic process, it's a dialogue both between the crew that are putting it together and a dialogue between the film and the filmmakers.
Thanks.
I think that bit on teamwork is key, because even in news television, if you don't have your camera person on board, you can have the star journalist or star anchor, but if the camera person doesn't like you, the work goes kaput. So I think in teamwork, really making a film is the best way to teach anyone how to be a team and get along. So it's great that's happening. Go ahead, there was a question from here, so go ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering, you were talking about how a lot of your films have the ability to impact people. Which one do you think has, well, in your opinion, impacted the most amount of people, and why?
Of which films?
Of the films and documentaries you've worked on, which one do you think has had the most impact on people, or even an impact on you, and why?
I mean, the impact on me comes from meeting the people that we interview. I mean, and I feel like I have a, generally I always connect with the subjects that we're working with and the people and the causes, and I get a lot out of every single one in terms of which has had the most impact and effect out in the real world. Sometimes it's trackable because it might be on YouTube. You see how many hits it gets, but that doesn't tell you how many people are following through with donating money, picking up the phone, showing up somewhere and helping. I mean, I think that's one area where there's some work to be done, is how you can track how media communication can be effective in this realm, in social cause realm, and how you can use that to make an iterative process to improve messaging, to improve the communication.
Oh, see, because part of the reason I was wondering this was, if you remember the Coney 2012 video, which
Yes.
came out, it had a huge following initially, and there was like this huge movement behind it, and then suddenly everything just broke down, and then it was never heard of again. So I was wondering, like, how do you think we could sort of combat something like that happening for the videos that we make?
Well, start by asking the question you're asking. Look at the video again. People watch that video, I think, because they cared. It told a message that was that made them feel something's wrong. We need to do something about it. And I'm not sure it gave people channels to do something about it, or possibly it gave them channels to take action that was empowering while they were watching the film, that was empowering enough for them to send a link on to their friends, but was possibly too much for them to actually take on, that it didn't break down the action they can take. So they're left with nowhere to go. That film also got a lot of flack for, as I recall, for misrepresenting some things, for taking too strong a position, and, as one of the earlier questions, tugging on heartstrings inappropriately, that it was really too manipulative. That may have also had some effect on it.
Thank
How
you.
important is honesty to the whole process? Because I think that's key also in making films, and the Coney case is one example. How important is honesty when you're making films?
It's a very interesting question. I think you have to have an inner compass that tells you what is honest and what is misleading, because filmmaking, by its nature, does manipulate reality. And you run into even the simplest questions. You're interviewing a subject, you're interviewing somebody, they're just out on their porch, but you say, you know, I can't even see where they live. They're right up against their porch. All I get is the one window of the house. Let's move your chair 30 feet away from your house, so now I can see the whole house and your neighborhood in the background over your shoulder when we're talking. The person never puts their chair there. It's not legit, but it does communicate more information. Is there anything unethical Are you deliberately misleading, or are you trying to provide more information? I think that's just a balance you have to find as a filmmaker. Again, no objective answer to that, but I think there's 100 of those decisions every day.
And I guess many of these young people will be facing those decisions. Any more questions? Or, oh, there's lots more, Andrew, so go ahead. We'll start from there. Go ahead.
What kind of focus points would you suggest to someone making a film on an unusual or an offbeat topic, something very unique? So what does one keep in mind to connect to the audience when you're presenting something that is unusual or unique or that the audience hasn't seen before?
Well, I think it's a good start. If you think it's unique and unusual, fortunately, that's something a lot of people are interested in. Just because it's unique and unusual doesn't mean that it has a narrow audience. It just means other people haven't been presenting information that way, haven't been making films like that. And I would say if it is unique, it probably means there's something that you see or some way you want to present it that is unique to you. So you have a great anchor to hold on to.
What are the focus points to focus on in the sense that if you're presenting something that the audience hasn't seen before, what do you remember while making that film so that you can communicate your message better? Instead of just the message, are there things more than your message in terms of presentation or graphics, or how do you go about something like this to communicate to the audience?
Mm-hmm. Well, usually it depends how long your project is. If it's long enough, you're probably weaving several different stories and themes that are all become part of a single braided thread. By revisiting issues, by bringing it up and then you kind of go somewhere else a little bit and then you come back and you provide a little new information and you prevent that. If you can repeat, but in a new way, what you've presented multiple times with deeper and richer meaning, and I think you can even do this in a 2-3 minute piece, definitely. There's all sorts of ways to do it. You're helping ensure that you're not leaving your audience behind. And for those who are with you, you're not just repeating a point, you're taking them a little deeper each time.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. I wanted to ask you, in today's day and age when anybody and everybody can be a filmmaker, I mean, with the access to technology, anybody can create a film and upload it. In this environment, I wanted your opinion on what you think are certain prerequisites that a good filmmaker should have, be it the way thought process, a certain skill set, or an eye to detail. So what do you think are certain key points that differentiates one individual from the other and their ability to create an interesting film?
There's a couple sides here. So one is your skill set. Can you light? Can you record good sound? Fortunately, it's a team effort. So you have other people you can work with. And if you really don't have anybody in your immediate vicinity, you can hire people for that. So you have your skill set. Then you have really the most important, your passion, your interest. Do you care about this? And can you communicate that? Can you keep your enthusiasm alive and channel it into the project? And that is going to come out. People want that. And then you have your topic, what you're talking about. And unfortunately, I think there are sometimes you want a topic that people are ready to receive or that they haven't yet received. There's a little bit of a capricious timing issue, I think, where you can bring up make a great film about an important issue and put passion into it, but other things are occupying people's minds. But they might come back to it later. So I think you have just to summarize, the zeitgeist of the time. Do you have a topic that's leading edge that people need more awareness of, but the zeitgeist is ready to be taken there? You have your passion that makes it emotionally connecting, and then you have your skill set and your team to execute.
So, and just one more question. Given that you work across, on different projects, be it so for you personally, is it when you work on different projects, is it a flow that you just get into and do different things? Say if you're creating a documentary or you're doing a proper film, or do you have to tune in and tune off according to the specific project at hand?
I don't really find it a problem refocusing my energy for the different kinds of projects that I do. I mean, when I'm in the project, I happen to love filmmaking. I love the puzzle of communicating to people, of putting together something that brings the audience on, hopefully, an emotional journey. It's like a fabulous crossword puzzle or chess game. There's a lot of elements that can't necessarily be explicitly talked about. So there's kind of a gut feeling, and I enjoy working from my gut. So I do work on projects that are very commercial, don't have much social value, but maybe they bring entertainment to people. And for me, they're really enjoyable to work on. But at the end of the year, and more as I get older, I try and look back and say, have I done a good balance between the pure puzzles of entertainment that I just really enjoy and trying to work on projects that hopefully better the world and are working with the messaging and the people that I think really matter for the long term.
So how has social media changed the way a viewer or a filmer will interact with their audience and spread their message?
Okay, so very interesting question. It's changed it a lot in more commercial realms that I am aware of. I don't know if I've seen it used to its full extent in social cause media. I think the movie studios have done some very effective things with participatory puzzles, information being fed out that people can get involved in if they click through to various episodes and get information. I don't know of that being used as effectively in social cause media. Of course, there's viral, things get out there viral. That's the main channel that I see. Just viral network through Facebook friends, through like the Coney video. But I think there's a lot of work to be done in that realm, and that's a very important area. So, I mean, hopefully the young leaders here, you're going to be able to look at that and put more fresh ideas and thinking and make that go somewhere. I think it's not fully developed.
We've seen traditionally that the main channel to interact with an audience would be through advertisement, that people with a lot of funding and a lot of resources could communicate with the most amount of people. Nowadays with social media, there's a large amount of a snowball effect in which if one person can communicate with 100 people, then they can communicate and so on. And does that change the message or the way so much? Or is it still, would you still make the same type of video that you would even if you were advertising?
Let me answer the question I think you're asking. So, I mean, one issue that I've been thinking a lot about is if you make the values that are often portrayed on YouTube, YouTube's a platform for everything, but it has some qualities that can be, I think, challenging if you're making a socially motivated documentary. YouTube has people come there with a set of expectations of being entertained, of having a short clips. And I think a lot of the qualities of YouTube and that expectation works against the kind of long-term social messaging that we're talking about here. I don't know what the best way is to get them involved in that platform effectively without the platform itself undermining the message in some way. Clearly, some videos on YouTube have been very successful. Again, I just still think it's, look, if somebody thinks they're going to see a comedy film and it ends up being a horror film, generally they're let down. Expectations are very important. And YouTube brings with it a whole set of expectations, a whole set of what the genre is that you're looking at. So it might be a matter of creating a channel on YouTube that is focused on a certain area, but it's still within the larger sphere of YouTube. I don't know what the answer is on that. And the other difficulty is, I think, for if you're making a film and your destination is YouTube, you have to ask yourself, well, do we need a funny ending? It can be a social messaging film, but does it have to have something that's funny? Does it have to have a button? How sad can we go? So the media, the outlet definitely influences the production. I mean, and the concepting.
All in all, do you think this change is for better or for worse?
Too hard to say. There's so much potential with what people have access to, both as viewers, what I have access to, and then as messengers, as filmmakers, access to get your message out there. That is very positive. So there's so much good that can come. Short attention spans and merely wanting to be entertained are on the other side of that coin. So that's, I don't think I can say whether I think it's better or less good.
Thank you.
I think one of the challenges also has been, and we face this in news documentary television, is that often the stereotypes, that when we say documentary or when we label documentaries documentary, people associate it with, oh, this is supposed to be good for me, but I'm bored, or they want to switch channels. Do you need to look also at perhaps rebranding or reorienting what we think a documentary should be, that a social message has to be told in a certain way, a commercial has to be told in a certain way, and an entertainer is told in a certain way?
Well, in some ways, I think that actually is happening. I think documentaries today have some really great techniques. I mean, people are making money on big documentaries. They're spending money on documentaries. They're getting great at licensing and spending the money for great music that gets people involved. They go into stock footage. They do animations that, yeah, at least in the feature realm of documentaries, there's some excellent work being done. And, I mean, just to remind everyone, I think you know this, they're very effective, these films. Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth completely changed the dialogue in America and I think the world on global warming. And there's a film that just came out last year, Invisible Wars, on women soldiers returning from the military who had been raped and did not have access, because they're enrolled in the military, don't have access to our regular justice system, and they end up reporting to their superiors and it doesn't work out. Nominated for Academy Award, and that has opened up a huge dialogue in government about how to address this. So I guess I'm just saying there's all these things we have to balance, all these challenges, all these skills we're talking about, but at the end of the day, it's incredibly effective, powerful medium, and it's making changes every day.
Well, I think we're almost completely out of time, so we will have to wrap. Is there another question? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. When Shiv spoke at the beginning and introduced, you know, this conference or this workshop idea, he spoke about making a difference. There's a slight difficulty with that because sometimes just by making a very beautiful film, just by the sheer aesthetics of it, you are able to convey something that perhaps you wouldn't by having a sort of set of ethical ideas that you're trying to push through that film, or a message that you're ostensibly trying to give. What would you say is the fine balance, as somebody else was talking about earlier, that when you're making a film, it's also an aesthetic medium. It's like being a painter, isn't it, also, I mean, in a contemporary way. So where do you draw the line between, I would imagine, sheer self-indulgence in some sense when you're making a film for your own sort of self-expression, and when you're trying to give a message as well with that film?
Well, again, it's a fine balance. I think you need to satisfy yourself. And if you are attracted to certain aesthetic qualities, if you want your film to not only address an issue, but to kind of be a poem, a work that stands on its own and is also kind of represents you and your feelings, it is a dialogue. So I say, make a film like that, because that's true to your heart, represents you, and if it interests you, there's a lot of people in the world, and there's a really good chance that you're going to communicate to a lot of people, and it'll be surprising. And if it doesn't, that's feedback for you. Because if you care about these issues, you're going to be communicating it over and over and over in different ways. So it's just a dialogue you're having with your audience. You make a project the way you want to make it. You get feedback. You see what happens. Maybe you make it different next time. Maybe you go back and re-edit and rework the original piece. And then, of course, there's the classic, I don't know if you've heard of the director's cut. Right? I guess they have it on every DVD now. But you also can make your own cut that satisfies you uniquely while recognizing you have your own quirks and attachments, and they're maybe competing with a message. And then you make your public version. And you just spend a day to kind of sequester away. Not here. You don't have that extra day here. But later.
Andrew, thanks so much for being here and for talking with everybody. Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you.